Robredo still makes errors. He is a bit of a hit-and-miss player. He's not a guy like David Ferrer who just puts the ball in play time after time after time. But he also is not the sort of a power player that might be able to hit through Andy Murray. Murray's moved so well at the back of the court that I can't see Robredo hitting winners, and yet I see him making errors. So I think Murray must be a pretty strong favorite for this one.
To be fair to Robredo, he produced a very thoughtful display against Mardy Fish in the second round. Came from a set down to win that. So that's given him a little bit of added belief. Hoping to make the quarterfinals here for only the second time. Andy Murray is, of course, the defending champion. Plenty of debate as to whether that's accurate. Certainly not very relevant, bearing in mind it was indoors.
Totally irrelevant, in fact.
Yes, but Manolo Santana did insist, and he's the tournament director, that Andy is the defending champion. But I take your point, Peter. You just touched on his on-court movement, and we've had an email from Darren in Essex who wants to ask you about this intelligence. Darren says, I think Murray is brilliant in the way he can break down his opponent by mixing his pace, moving them to positions that they're not comfortable with. Is that something that Andy was just naturally born with, or is it something that he would have been taught as a youngster?
Well, come on, you're not born with an ability to have tactical awareness on a tennis court. You know, you learn it. But
some are more naturally tactically astute than others, aren't they?
Well, no, they're faster learners, that's all. You have to learn that sort of thing. And so he obviously was very astute at a very young age, or else had an astute coach. And he understands it. He understands it better than probably just about anybody out there.
Ivor Sorokins in Hove says he's just a little worried that Murray is still hitting the ball a little on the short side, hasn't quite found his depth on a consistent basis. Is that something that you've noticed?
Well, yeah, I think that tennis players, you know, hitting the ball is a skill that just grows. It grows. Andy Murray, all these guys. Federer, I'm sure, hits the ball better now than he did 5 years ago, even though his results aren't as good. Because it's something that with every ball you hit, you learn a little bit more and you just feel it more. So as Murray gets older, you know, he's only 21, he will have more confidence in hitting the ball to targets, hitting the ball deeper. At times now, he doesn't feel it. And then he'll throw in a performance where he'll hit a lot of short balls.
Well, he told us after his win a couple of nights ago that he and Alex Corretja and Miles McLagan have been working on a few specific things with regards to a clay court. He wants to play on clay as he would on any other surface, and he was talking about using just a little more racket head speed as well, trying to get the ball up and over the net a bit better.
Okay, fine. I have nothing to say about that. Makes sense to me.
1 minute.
Two wise heads guiding Murray through this particular part of the campaign. Another sunny day in Madrid as well. We can see the shadows, and hopefully the crowds will be a little more obvious today. It did build up. We had atmosphere, so didn't we, when Queen Sophia turned up to watch the King. Well, it's a busy old day, and this is a pretty good start to it. Up in the commentary box, Mark Petchey and Leif Shiras.
Thanks so much, Marcus. Peter, great to have you aboard as Andy Murray takes on Tommy Robredo in his third round match. Of course, one of the people watching closely, Albert Costa, the Spanish Davis Cup captain, who will just see where Tommy Robredo stands in his lineup of stars that he can choose from these days for the Spanish Davis Cup side. And Robredo already in the midst of a great season. You know, he slipped outside the top 20 last year at year's end. He just didn't have a great season in 2008, but he seems to have signaled that he is back in 2009. He's competitive. And he's a player who twice finished inside the top 10. So this is a player you have to reckon with really on any surface.
I agree, and I also think this is a very tough match for Andy, because obviously Robredo
early in the season elected to go and play the South American clay court swing. So I mean, he's got, you know, been on the clay a lot already this year. It's a surface that he feels very comfortable on, and I agree with Peter what he said. He's a very sort of hit and miss player nowadays, Roberto. I thought when he came onto tour he was very solid. He's swift around the court, but certainly he has his days where he does make a hatful of unforced errors, and that's where Andy today can obviously get some benefit with his ability to pick up a lot of balls from the back of the court and get balls in court ultimately.
Well, the first year, as we've said many occasions, this event is held in Madrid at this new Magic Box, a fabulous new facility. And a look at some of the field courts. And the weather this year has not required some of these retractable roofs that are outfitted on 3 of the main courts here. But this is the setting, and when it's full, it can match any place in the world, certainly for atmosphere. It hasn't been full too often. I think the only time it has been is when Rafael Nadal has been on the lineup card. But a great day of tennis in prospect, and the first one, it's Robredo and Murray. A spot in the quarterfinals at stake. You can pick up in the courtside microphones the wind that has really picked up today. And Mark, I think you and I both saw that match in Las Vegas a couple of years back when these two squared off, and the winds were terrible on that day. A match that Tommy Robredo ended up winning.
Yeah, I think had there been a roof in Vegas that day, they would have shut it for the wind. It's strong. It's going to be difficult for the players to play well in this.
Yeah, that meeting in Vegas, 2006, that was the first time the two had ever played. It was a hard court. In fact, all their meetings have been on hard. 2007 in Metz, Robredo won that one in 3 sets. And then in Indian Wells, you may remember that Murray was dominating before Robredo retired with a wrist injury.
Big match as well for Robredo. Opportunity to put some real points on the board in terms of his ranking, but also, like all the other Spanish players, fighting for a few headlines of his own. Trying to get the Spanish public to remember that there are other players out there apart from Nadal. Clear indication of his skills on this particular surface after that opening game. Just going back to the point that Marcus and Peter were talking about in the studio about Andy and his instincts on the court and being tactically aware, and Peter absolutely right, because at the end of the day, Andy was somebody that loved to just stay up all night and watch the Australian Open through the evening, and would watch the top players, how they played, and really did teach himself in so many ways about the strategies that are important in winning matches. Many gifts that he was born with, but that certainly was something that he managed to learn.
That's a good shot by Robredo. And it seems like Andy, and I know you know him a little bit better than I, but he just has a natural curiosity for the game and really appreciates all the nuances, the tactics, the strategy, and even from a young age had watched a lot of tennis.
Absolutely. I mean, he really was a great student of the game without anyone telling him he had to be.
Well, he made up the ground, but he just couldn't control it at the end. It's good pressure from Robredo.
Yeah, it is. He's getting time to play. I mean, the one thing that Robredo doesn't really want is time on the ball. He's got quite long swings off both the forehand and the backhand side. You can hurry him into errors. But at the moment, the Spaniard looking very composed out here in what are tricky conditions.
Yeah, Murray's about 3 inches taller, maybe 20 pounds heavier, so he has the edge in power and strength. You know, can he put enough of that on display like he did in that point to push Robredo around? Because Robredo is not a power merchant, and I think Murray's going to have enough time today to really play the type of game he wants to play. And I think it's just a matter of him getting it right today.
Couple of wonderful serves. It's not always about the ace count, it's about where you put it and what you're doing with it. And you could see that those last couple of serves had great placement, but more than that, they got up so high, and a single-handed backhand, it's going to be very difficult for Robredo to hit an effective return.
The Spaniard really utilizing all the court. He played the ball deep with a bit of pace and also attacked short. It's a nice recognition of where he was in the court.
Wouldn't be surprised if Murray serves and volleys a little bit today with that particular serve, the kick serve up high to the backhand side. And Robredo, as you can see, returning from a fairly deep position.
Alex Correia, great Spaniard who's been working with Andy for the weeks of this clay court season, right into the French Open as well. Yeah, fine first serve. So Murray's on the board. Of course, the defending champion at this event, although it came at a different time of the year on a different surface. But he leads the day's play today on court Manolo Santana.
Pretty good energy from the crowd early on, which is nice to hear. That's a solid first volley there, because it must have been tempting to hit the drop volley. You see Murray was actually chasing it in, thinking that that was what was going to happen. I'm not quite sure what he was moaning about at the end of the point.
I've never seen Robredo hit this many drop shots.
15.
And that time Murray was right on top of it, was able to get it right at the top of the bounce.
That's tremendous tennis, and he's hitting against the wind there, Robredo.
It's
going to be the end. That's going to, both players, you feel, are going to find it a little tougher to hang on to their serves from.
In a sense, this match has that kind of potential. Some tight service games, long rallies, a lot of maneuvering. And Murray patiently trying to break down the Spaniard's backhand side. He's been successful the last couple points.
Yeah, and he's getting plenty of height over the net, and it's getting up high to Robredo, and there's very little that the Spaniard can do. He's just going to try and knock it back to a length. Tennis equivalent of Chinese water torture, that last point. Been there on a clay court.
thought that Murray almost had a chance to make the play, but the forehand just had enough zip behind it.
Yeah, just didn't get a good enough length on the approach shot or width. I'm a little surprised he didn't go back into the backhand corner of Robredo, because he certainly can generate more pace, Robredo, from that forehand wing.
Yeah, there's enough pressure, as you said, behind that forehand. He can make an impression. He says that's his best shot. He has a tremendous faith in it. Well, there's some good hard work from Robredo. Murray's working him over pretty good, but the Spaniard's been able to hang in there, hang on to his serve, and a 2-1 lead. Well, the opening games have been almost a cerebral exercise, really. Murray has been exploring the Robredo backhand, trying to play with a little less pace, and the Spaniard's been able to survive here at one break point and get ahead 2-1. But you sense that Murray has plenty in reserve that he could utilize here.
I agree with you. I'm going to be interested to see how he plays this particular game from this end, because get the sense that the wind's really aiding Robredo right now. So is he going to try and hit the ball, or is he going to play Zaki the same way as he just did?
Well, he tried to find a little something extra on the forehand. Missed it wide. Yeah, and Murray can be so effective when he is up inside the baseline, leaning on balls like that.
Yeah, and it's safe, aggressive play, and already you can see he's having a hit through the wind, so he's come out here to play a little bit differently from this end.
Oh yes, standing strong at the net.
Just great balance at the net there, using his hands well.
Yeah, some great feel, wasn't it, on that inside-out volley? You could see in that replay how he softened his hand to absorb the pace, change the direction.
It's been an impressive service game so far. Well, I think Robredo would have been expecting a little bit more from himself in that game, but some mistimed backhands, and you said it in the previous game, Leif, that Murray was breaking that side down, and I'm sure he'll be looking to do that continuously as the match progresses. He really has to go to the maximum sort of power on his backhand as well, Robredo, which can cause it to break down.
And again, the conditions suggesting there's a little bit of wind coming from Robredo's back into Murray's face. A second overhead was required to finish that one off.
Yeah, and a day where you've got to watch every single ball so carefully, you can see how much that was moving. And Robredo had to concentrate so hard on the ball that he couldn't really keep one eye on where Murray was going.
And he nearly didn't get out of the way of that forehand. Was able to find just enough room to produce the winner. Well, a solid service game of his own. Tommy Robredo has a 3-2 lead in this opening set. Well, Andy Murray was on court for 2 hours and 7 minutes in his first match victory over Simone Bolelli, the Italian. Tommy Robredo, well, he's had 2 match wins. And in both matches, Robredo had to recover from a set down. So the Spaniard's willing to go the distance. That one looks like it may have caught a part of the line. No argument from Robredo. That was a great point, really. And now you can understand why Robredo is going to the drop shot as often as he is. A fair amount of wind. And watch how close to the net Murray is here. I mean, that ball right up inside the net.
Yeah, it was important that Murray got up there quickly as well, so he had a bit of time just to sort of stop and then try and out-fake Robredo, which he did. And you can see the Spaniard, particularly on the backhand side, he's a little handcuffed down this particular end.
Yeah, Murray locks off the court, doesn't he? Just funnels all his tennis down into the Spaniard's backhand. It's a dominant position and a love service game.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to give up too many unforced errors early on. He is happy to accept the physical challenge on the clay now as well, given all the fitness training he does, and so that's also part of the process for him.
Now is this the time for Murray now to turn the screws? Well, obviously this pro-Spanish crowd sensing trouble.
Such a great serve. He's disappointed that he couldn't find the length on the return. He just overhit it, but that was a smart serve from Robredo into the body. Murray won't mind watching Robredo try and pull the trigger on that forehand from that particular position on the court.
Yeah, that's really a symptom, isn't it, of the pressure that Robredo feels with that ball up high and the wind carrying it back into the court. So 15-30. Oh, yes, filled up the space beautifully.
Yeah, he had the racket back before he even got there. Look at that. Just a little punch, used the wind as well.
Just a little too much on that last backhand. It just floated up into the jet stream. Murray had a real chance there, didn't he? Right on top of the net.
Yes, I think it did come out to him to say there was a chance. I mean, that was gilt-edged, wasn't it? Just needed to time it, that was all. But again, I suppose the conditions being as tough as they are, nothing's easy.
It's fascinating, isn't it, that Robredo is so aware of when he has a chance to dictate play. Gets on top of the forehand, immediately tries to make something happen. Well, Robredo was a bit lucky to get out of that game, wasn't he? A short overhead and Murray unable to handle it in the wind, and Robredo survives that game. Robredo's father, Angel, is a tennis coach. His mom, Dolores, is actually an assistant tennis coach. So it's a sure thing to say that tennis is a big part of their family. And growing up, he was always a fabulous junior player in Spain. And ultimately moved to train in Barcelona. He actually didn't play on a clay court until he was 14 years old. So he didn't come down the typical Spanish track. It was a great effort, but to no avail. Robredo handled that smash pretty well. And now he has the edge on Murray at love 30.
Yeah, from this end, that's all about trying to get up there and hit the ball in the middle of the racket. And you know, if you can get it down into the court, the wind's going to do most of the work for you. Got a reprieve in that last game, and he's trying to build on it here, Robredo. Murray's reprieve. Gift from Robredo.
Yeah, and that's also fairly generous. Isn't it remarkable how tension shows itself on a tennis court? One of the most consistent players on the tour, and he misses a fairly routine ball. It's an impressive combination.
That's a big time for one from Robredo. It's a game that Robredo doesn't really want to let slip by, because he's really been in the driving seat of it, but he's offered up the lifeline to Murray, really, from love 30.
That's a great combination. Murray took a step inside the baseline. He was able to read that ball early and just snap off a winner.
Yeah, but this is actually a great shot. I think he was originally electing to play the lob over Robredo once he'd got it, but then saw he had the opportunity to drive it and was good enough to make the shot. Perfect combination.
Well, apologies for the colorful language. Murray to 4 games all. And again, that's the kind of pressure Tennessee needs to produce.
Yeah, he was disappointed with himself in the previous Robredo service game by slicing as much as he did. He felt as though he needed to hit his double-hander, get the ball up, and he doesn't need to go so close to the line. He just needs to hit with that type of pressure into the back, and eventually he's going to get the reward. That ball stayed low. Time on this court now as well because of the wind. The court drying out very quickly. Always easy to keep your footing as well when it's as dry as this.
Well, Robredo had Murray love 30 in the last game. Now he faces a deficit.
Couldn't quite get a good enough length on any of his shots there and keep Robredo at bay.
15-30.
No, that's over the baseline.
15-40.
And you sense that Robredo feels that pressure. Murray is so skilled in defense. He tried to put it a little bit closer to the line. Breakpoint chances.
It's better for Robredo. I think he's made 2 really poor choices in this game, Robredo, where he's made the unfortunate first point of the game. I know the ball stayed a bit low, but he took his backhand up the line, which is not easy to do when you, with the wind over the high part of the net from a low position, and the same with the forehand on the previous point. I just thought he went into a very small part of the court over the high part of the net. There, he played with a little bit of margin for error.
Well, Murray has had 5 break points and has yet to break through.
Flat de l'exécution.
Now some great work from Robredo, and Murray facing the wind, unable to really get enough length on some of those defensive plays or keep the ball down low enough. And Robredo just didn't relinquish control. It was a good effort by the Spaniard there.
It was. He respected a couple of difficult balls in that rally, Robredo. He didn't try and go for too much.
Deuce.
Now that one gets away from Robredo. Can Murray make this one count? That time Murray was able to play through the wind well.
Had a little bit more time on the ball, didn't he? He was in better position to actually take a swing and put a bit of pressure on Robredo. He'll be looking to try and drive this backhand return if he gets a serve out there, I think.
Oh, that is the nature of altitude tennis, isn't it? And he's smiling through the pain, isn't he? Because once that ball gets off your strings, if you don't get a top on it, it just won't come down.
Yeah, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, well, maybe he should be trying to hit that or do that. But, you know, he's had enough errors from the Robredo racket in this game that the balance between getting balls in court and also being aggressive is a very fine one.
Out.
Yeah, that one looked a little bit long. I was surprised there was no call. Umpire Bernardes overruling. And you can see what kind of day it is today. Fairly warm in Madrid. He's got his jacket off, which is a clear indication of the conditions today. And you can look at the court as well. I mean, it is dry. And when Robredo is managing the center of the court, there are clouds of dust, which makes it very tricky to move and get traction.
He's broken another string, and he talked about it at Monte Carlo being slightly, it's the same racket but different grip and what have you, but he's certainly broken more strings than I can remember him in matches.
Is he fairly particular about his tension and the racket weights? Or?
Yes, I think particular would be a good word. I mean, I think all of the Masters. I mean, Rafa seems to be the one guy with the stringing that he's happy to have it done at the tournament. The others, obviously, as you can see, that there's a stringing company that goes to the Masters and the majors that does it for them and gets it absolutely spot. He's somebody that doesn't seem quite as specific about his tension, but yeah, the weight, that's something else.
Now Murray can hardly believe his luck in that game, but Robredo, again, tenacious as ever. Ahead, 5-4. Now one of 12 Spaniards to finish in the top 10 since the rankings were established on the ATP computer. Of course, he finished in the top 10 twice, 2006 and 2007, and that's not an easy achievement for a player who doesn't possess the kind of firepower that seems to distinguish the men's game these days. He's just about 5 feet 10, 5 feet 11, only 165 pounds. I mean, this guy's a resilient warrior. Small, yet strong of heart.
Yeah, and I think that's why he didn't have such a good year in 2008. I think to be successful consistently for Robredo is a lot of hard work, not just physically but mentally in matches. It started off the match with some very effective drop shots, executed them perfectly, but hasn't been quite so successful since.
You talked about Robredo's mental strength. He needed it in Rome. Remember, Marat Safin was beating him, serving for the match. Somehow he won that against Marty Fish yesterday. Fish was just 2 points from winning in the second set, and Robredo ended up winning it in the third. Yeah, and that's another thing that can happen when you're playing in altitude. You try and spin the serve in, and again, if you don't get over the top strongly, the ball just doesn't come down like it would at sea level. Ooh. Tried to thread the needle. It was just a little space down the line.
Couldn't help himself, could he? I'm not sure again he was in a good enough position to really hit that forehand. He was never going to hit a winner from there anyway, but you can see the difference between one end to the other and how Murray plays from this end, and that was a big hold for him. Dealing with a little bit of frustration in his own mind right now that he should have wrapped this set up.
Now that time he did thread the needle, and Murray was running in that direction too, and yet he was able to finish.
This was a very clever shot and difficult to execute as well, and well, he cut it pretty fine up the line there, but I'd just like to see Murray perhaps try and take on a couple more balls from this end now on the Robredo serve.
Well, he took on the forehand, and that time it had pace and also that high bouncing effect.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a screaming winner at Mach 10. You know, I mean, that's a perfect shot. It was heavy, it was high over the net, it was great length. I mean, Robredo's in all sorts of trouble when he hits that type of shot.
Yeah, nice angle for Murray, and Robredo forced into air, and now he's going to force to defend these break points. And how many times has Murray been in this position? Can he capitalize finally here in the 11th game? Yes, and that time he does, as Robredo, feeling the pressure, coughs up another error. So Murray will serve for the set. Well, plenty for the Spaniard to think about, having lost that last game, and it really was the errors that caused him this deficit now at 6-5. We're on the Manolo Santana center court of the Magic Box in Madrid, third round action. And Murray enjoying his first week as a world number 3. Will have a chance to close out the opening set.
Still a bit of good news for Robredo. Of course, he's playing at the end where perhaps he has the greatest advantage. If he can just manage his unforced errors, it'll be tough for Murray to hit the winners from this end anyway. Percentage of first serves going in, but majority of those have been heavy kickers into the backhand side. That one had a little more pace on it.
He's hit a number of good backhands in this game.
A Namibian sandstorm out there.
Are you a little surprised at how dry this court has really been allowed to become? I mean, you're in altitude conditions, you'd feel that this thing would be watered more thoroughly. I mean, it's a dust bowl out there. Now that was a real test of character. And somewhere in that rally you felt that Murray had the advantage and relinquished it. What an effort by the Spaniard. He ran about a mile to get those balls back into play.
So I don't think Robredo's got the energy or the puff left to talk. But Murray clearly unhappy. Little surprised he didn't come in. Had a couple of occasions to do so with Robredo on the ropes.
Now Murray able to come up with something very special there. Difficult to attack his two-hander.
Yeah, didn't get enough width or length, did he? Robredo was just too conservative, the approach shot. And wonderful skills displayed by Murray, but Robredo knows he has that, so too surprised by the result of it, and that's a big point saved by Murray.
fights off another break point.
Deuce.
Well, this opening set, 65 minutes into it, 66 by the courtside clock, and finally, Murray, a set point. They'll give the Spaniard credit. He's executing the same strategy Murray executed from that same end. Again, just funneling all his attack down into the Murray backhand. British fans looking a little nervous. The Union Jack in the magic box.
Struggled to find the first serve and he really wanted it, but rectified that problem there.
Second double fault for Murray. And it makes the job even more difficult. Oh, what a shot. Soaking up so much pressure. And then just a brilliant pass.
Just exceptional from Murray here. I mean, look how deep he is. Just a little flick. I mean, stunning.
Yeah, even Ian Tiriac there, supporting Murray with that great shot. Well, that was not an easy set by any means. But right down the finish, Murray came up with something good when he needed it. A break and a close service game. 7-5, Murray takes the opener.
Double 401. Cost you 25 pence. Network charges may vary. Please include your name when texting, and the email address is
if that one found the centre.
Well, there are some of the past champions. Michael Campbell won in a playoff. Peter Heblum and Thomas Bjorn, that was at Port Marnock in 03. There was a four-way playoff in 02, which was at Falter Island. And Richard Finch, well, who could possibly forget his second win of the 2008 season. Here's the story of it.
That's put you right on that. I know you and your wife were getting very frustrated not knowing what it was all about. Andy Murray getting a little frustrated with the umpire about the court as he went to sit down at the end of that very long first set, which lasted an hour and 10 minutes. He said something along the lines of, "This court's a disgrace." Well, Jose and his team are out trying to improve the surface. Whether that will make a big difference remains to be seen. One thing's for sure, Tommy Robredo, for the third time this week, is going to have to come from a set down if he's to maintain his progress in Madrid. Let's get back up to the commentary box. I know that Leaf and Mark are experts when it comes to this sort of maintenance.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
I actually grew up having to do all of this.
Did you?
Yeah, my club. Yeah, well, you had, I mean, it's not really officially clay. It's more of a shale type of court that used to have to drag it with the mat and get the hose out and give it a bit of a sprinkling.
Do you find it a little surprising to know that the court is in the condition it is in, or is it because it is a first-year event that the courts haven't really taken yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because it's new. I think, unfortunately, that is the case. I think they are a little soft, and you can see there. I mean, if he's going to water any more than that, I mean, we're going to have a massive delay. And I just think that it's drying so quickly because of the wind today and just the altitude and it's very difficult for the ground staff. I don't know how deep, you know, the bottom layer is. I mean, it might be that, you know, it's just not that deep, so therefore you can't put too much water on it.
Well, normally if it has a deep enough base, you can water the court fairly heavily, and that water will stay in the base and keep the court soft and clay court-like. But because this court, I think, is thinner, the water dries before it can get down into the, you know, the deeper part of the court, so it becomes very slippery and very hard.
Yeah, it was the British company Ontucar that actually invented the drainage system, which allowed these courts to be put all over Europe in areas where perhaps you know, it has a little bit more rain than they would like, all the way back in the sort of I think it was 1920, around there. Because up till then, these courts didn't really have any drainage, and when it rained, they were just unplayable. And so it's so key. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why the UK doesn't have that many clay courts, because of frost and just the general maintenance of keeping these courts in good condition is very high.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of irony, isn't it, that we've got these amazing stadiums all with retractable roofs, but this court could use a little rain, couldn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got two superb, you know, this is a theatre, and you've got two great actors, and you want to see them be able to perform to their best. I mean, it's a little bit like the Wembley pitch, you know, the problem that we've been having. You know, the surface needs to be right, and it's not disastrous, but it's soft, and there are too many bad bounces. There's no question, and when the court gets as slippery as it was at the end there, it's difficult to play your best tennis, and ultimately that's what you want to see. I mean, Djokovic had a fall yesterday that was, I mean, it looked very nasty to start with. Thankfully, he actually got his hand down and he didn't go down in the splits. But you don't want to be seeing too many of those, and just before the French in particular. And I can understand the concerns of some of the players. But, you know, now you're going to drag it because it's too wet. You see, there's a problem with something here, because, you know, he hasn't put that much water on, but you can see it sitting. So he's in a no-win situation, the guy that's sprinkling the court, because he puts any more on, which would be nice because it would keep it a little damper. You can't play.
Yeah, and the very nature of a clay tennis court, you could have a court outside in the field court or in a different stadium. It could be very different from this. The drainage could be a little bit different. But here on Manolo Santana court, this particular court is it's been a challenge for the grounds crew to keep it up to par. And you can see the crowd is wondering when play is going to get started. Finally, they're taking their seats.
And obviously, traditionally, they water the court, they drag it at the end of each set. I guess right now there is an argument that for the minute in between, you know, you do allow it to get watered, and you know, sometimes circumstances dictate that you have to change policy, and I think it would be a good policy, particularly today, just to allow the ground staff a minute just to quickly go round.
And I think the players have asked that this end of the court, Robredo's end, get dragged a little bit more. I think that's to ensure that any standing water has been addressed, and also this perhaps little area right around the baseline there. Of course, you were probably dragging around an old tennis net, which was one of the articles that used to be dragged in the old days. Now they've got sort of a modern version of it here.
Old carpets as well. That was another one. You can see the holes in this one, but the carpet was also attached to a little wooden beam that we used to pull. You see, and look at the court already. I mean, in certain patches, you can see it drying out. And I mean, this is the dilemma. I mean, the baseline, and he's going to do the lines now. He used to even do this. Are you impressed? Because I do no housework at all.
If the commentary doesn't work out, at least we know you've got that as a future.
Is it working out?
Murray played such a strong point. Robredo, one defensive lob, and all of Murray's hard work had been erased.
One of the key factors for him winning the set was his fitness, and you know, he was able, after that brutal point that they had that Robredo actually ultimately won, he was able to still perform exceptionally well. I think that's one of the big things. You know, tennis is about repetition, and fitness is a key part of being able to play your best consistently, and I think he just outlasted Robredo. Well, a good start by the Spaniard. I mean, he'll be disappointed that he couldn't force that opening set into a tiebreaker, but he's put that disappointment behind. In fact, maybe he's benefited from that delay that they had. He could just sort of allow his frustrations to evaporate and get back to work. But as you can see here, Murray plugging away on that backhand side with his return. He's gone in there nearly every single time, and if well, that 2%, that's just drifted there, hasn't it? It shows his skill, though, that he's actually able to hit it there so consistently.
Yeah, he's really wanting to avoid the Robredo forehand, that's for certain.
Getting to the point where I feel as though Robredo, just for the sake of it, needs to step in a little bit and stand up. He's just getting pushed so far behind the baseline off the serve of Murray. Just lazy brilliance, wasn't it, from Murray? I mean, just the first off the returner serve. I mean, he just stroked it up the line like he was having a hit Sunday afternoon in the park, and then just outwitting Robredo. Flirted with the line.
Only handled that smash. Remember, he had a smash early in the opening set on a break point and failed to convert. So we mentioned that Murray in as the world number 3, enjoying his first week there. And we got an email from Jono in Chester. If Andy Murray is ranked 3 in the world, what ranking was Fred Perry if Murray is the highest ranked ever for a Brit? Mark, you want to address that?
Or highest for a Brit in the Open era since '68. Obviously, Fred Perry was ranked number 1 in the world, I think, for 3 years. The Open era, that's when the tennis went totally professional from the amateur game, but the rankings actually only started in 1973.
That's right, when they actually awarded points for every match won and an average was taken. The first man ever ranked number 1 on the ATP ranking computer. Do you know who it was, Mark?
I don't.
Ilie Nastase. 1973, he was the first man atop the computer rankings. Now, this is a nice development for Andy Murray fans as Robredo just losing the plot a bit. So that's a nice breakthrough for Andy Murray. 2-1, he's got a set and a break. Well, the look at the surroundings here in Madrid. This is the Magic Box. The first year this event has been held at this remarkable facility. It's also a part of the Madrid push to be a part of the Olympics in future years. Nice facility, perhaps, to host the Olympics down the road. I believe they're in the running with Chicago. Also has some Olympic development going on in that fine city, the Windy City. It's also windy in Madrid today.
Celebrated my 21st birthday in Chicago.
And the city's still standing.
It is. I took my passport to show the doorman. 1 minute past midnight so I could get in.
So, well, that's why these two have been so careful about attacking. It's because they're both remarkable in defense. Great defensive lob from Murray, and ultimately a great passing shot from Robredo.
Yeah, it really was. I got the sense that last service game from Robredo, that was almost a white towel game where he just threw it in. I cannot take any more. But maybe that shot there will just give him a little inspiration.
Watch this a little bit. That looked like Fabrice Santoro. A little bit of the magician in the magic box. Murray needs to be careful here. He broke Robredo's serve in the 11th game of the opening set, able to serve it out. He'd certainly like to maintain his advantage here early in the second, up 2-1 with a break.
You can see how Robredo struggles to defend on that type of ball. It's deep, it's got a little bit of pace, and such a long swing. It's very difficult for him to time it correctly and still manage his zone length back.
Normally the drop shot's fairly dependable. That time he just cut it a little too close to the sideline. Well, if you remember their match in Indian Wells, it was a thoroughly dominant encounter for Andy Murray. 6-2-3 love before Robredo finally had had enough. He had some wrist problems, allegedly. Although in Miami, he showed no signs of problems. Murray certainly got in his head that day. Well, did it catch the line? Yeah, I think Robredo's going to say it did. Well, nice to avoid trouble on his serve. And Murray able to get a little space between he and Robredo here in the second set. Of course, Murray, the defending champion here, he's won 2 Masters Series titles, one Madrid last year, but also one in Cincinnati. So he's won on clay and, excuse me, one indoors, one on hard courts. Of course, Robredo, the one Masters Series title that Robredo has was in the former Masters Series event in Hamburg. Similar surface to this, fairly dry, fairly slippery. But right now it's Murray who's getting the best of this one.
That's a great point. And maybe now with the little bit of space he has between himself and Robredo in this second set, he's going to explore that type of tennis a little bit more.
Well, that is the kind of aggressive tennis we saw in Monte Carlo in that second set to Nadal, when you really felt he was hitting the heights just to get to that tiebreaker with Nadal. But a little more aggressive, a little more pressure applied than pressure absorbed.
Robredo flying in with sound effects. Maybe an indication that he's feeling the pace a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of play that really bothers Robredo, because you talked about his big swings, and it's tough for him to catch up to that ball.
And also a complete change from Murray to go into the forehand. He's, as we saw from the graphic previously, he's been directing it all into the backhand side. A little bit more on that one as well, and Robredo seemingly submitting here.
Did that miss? It looked like it shadowed the line, but...
Yeah, I thought that got the line as well. And if it did, it was a stunning point.
Toca... No, toca acá. También está mitad de la bola, que viene en la diagonal. Sí, pero bueno.
I think he's trying to say that it was good. Well, the return was one thing. It floated and landed on the line. Then the finisher caught just the barest edge, and that just might be the dagger for Murray. 4-1, 2 breaks.
Umbrella? The umbrella, please.
Well, I'm sure Tommy Robredo's a little disappointed. He had some chances in that opening set, but you know, Murray just always seems to play his best at the right times and win the key points. At least that's how he's been able to make consistent progress this year. When the pressure's on, like most great champions, he finds his best tennis, finds a way to win. We've seen that again today.
I think Robredo's, he's thinking, well, there really is magic in this magic box when that ball goes in. I mean, he's just had 3 lines in a row, and that ball was so far out before it came back in.
And I'm sure coming into this match, Robredo felt Well, this is where I want to get Murray. You know, their 3 previous meetings were all on hard courts. Here he is playing in Spain on a clay court. I mean, Murray only has 4 match wins on clay this year. Robredo has 21, most of any player in the world. Even more than Nadal, although Nadal has yet to lose a match on clay. Did they ever say that about your tennis, that he had yet to lose a match?
Yeah, no, they've said that about my year this year.
Murray hasn't exactly been losing many matches, or compiling a remarkable record.
Listen, I beat a top 10er on clay, a former finalist at the French Open. I bet you didn't do that.
Thomas Muster?
No, I was a break up in the 3rd against him on clay, and I choked. Beresategi.
Beresategi, wow. So coming down the home stretch is Andy Murray. Very comfortable indeed. Of course.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Beresategi from the Where Are They Now file.
Yeah, it's after that result, actually. They tried to withhold his guarantee, in fact, after I beat him, because the guy didn't think he'd tried. How did that make me feel? But, I mean, Robredo, I was just going to go back. If you were his coach, wouldn't you, at some point, like to have seen him step in? And I mean, he's just taken that serve, and I just think, oh, you've got to try something.
No, you're absolutely right. One of the basic tenets in tennis is change a losing game, and he's losing badly. And yet he's still basically persisting with what he always does. I mean, somehow you have to be able to, or willing to, step out of your comfort zone to try and find a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, because by standing in, it would force Murray to actually hit his first serve rather than just sort of roll it in. And it's been comfortable for. I mean, it hasn't been always comfortable on serve for him, but his tactics have been easy to achieve, I think. He's looked so impressive in this, but I know Robredo's desire levels have dipped after getting broken. But at the same time, the way that he's carving through him is mightily impressive.
Oh, that's wonderful tennis. And again, talents in reserve, finally unveiling some of the magic. So here is a match point for Andy Murray. Yeah, that's a wonderful finish. So what started out as a very tricky encounter in the opening set, in the end, is fairly straightforward for Andy Murray. And I think he really found his footing here today. And that has to feel good to beat someone like Robredo right here in Madrid. So as a defending champ, he's still got a chance to defend.
Very difficult conditions, but a wonderful victory for Murray. I wouldn't be surprised if he said that's the best victory he's had on a clay court in his career.
Well, hopefully we'll find that out in just a few moments when we have a word with the British #1. But he is comfortably through in the end to the quarter-finals. And on his 22nd birthday tomorrow, he'll play either Juan Martín del Potro or Stanislas Wawrinka, who are still in action, deep in the second set of their third-round match. But a good display in the end. Peter Fleming is alongside me. Tommy Robredo simply couldn't find the answers he was looking for.
No, he certainly couldn't. It looked as though he was bereft of ideas, wasn't it? I mean, it looked as though it was always just a matter of time before Murray finished the job, really.
Hour and 43 minutes. First set alone was around an hour and 10, but the second over in the blink of an eye. Very encouraging progress indeed, although the conditions weren't necessarily the easiest. The blustery winds, the court itself, they're having problems with that surface, aren't they?
Yeah. No, the court is bad. It will take time to settle. And it was windy. It was difficult conditions today, but you know, he's coped well.
Okay, well, let's have a word with Andy himself. Well done through to the quarterfinals. Andy, you said you were delighted with your performance against Simone Bolelli the other night. Was this one even better?
Well, Robredo's, I mean, he's top 10 clay court player, I think. I mean, he's been to the second week of the French Open a dozen times, and not a dozen, but he's, you know, he's been to the second week quite a few times. You know, he's won, I think, 8 tournaments on clay. So, you know, he plays very well on this surface. So the win itself was very good, but the conditions were tricky. The court at the end of the first set was so dry. It was really tough to move, and it was quite a strong breeze from one of the ends. But I didn't give him too many opportunities in the first set, and I was just a little bit tense early on. I had a lot of break points, didn't take them, and I started to swing a bit freer in the second. How big a problem are the conditions? Obviously, this is a brand new tournament. Is it simply going to be a case of these courts having to bed in for a little while? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's normally on clay, when it hits the line, it shoots through a bit, but here it's kind of the lines are sitting quite high, so it's kind of bouncing off to the sides. It's not sort of shooting through as much, and you know, especially when the court gets very dry, because it's still not that hard, because it's new. At the back of the courts, there's some pretty bad bounces, but I'm sure they'll get better as the tournament goes on. And next year, you know, I think they're going to use this as sort of Spanish Federation training base, so they'll get a lot of play on them. I'm sure they'll be better next year.
Andy, how you doing? Are you enjoying your time in Madrid?
Good. How are you? Yeah, it's been pretty good. Got a birthday tomorrow, so no, everything's been fun so far. Obviously, you have to put the birthday celebrations on hold for just a little while. We look forward to seeing you in action again tomorrow. Congratulations today. Thank you. Yeah, birthdays can't get in the way of important Masters Series events, but aside from the fact that these conditions are awkward for everybody, he really seems to have just gone up a notch over the course of this week. No, I think so. You know, every match he plays on clay, I think he'll grow a little bit more. You know, the whole team thing that he's got going with Miles McLagan and his regular team, along with Alex Corretja, I think it's taken them a little while to bed in, but he learns. That's the one thing you have to say about Andy Murray, is he is, you know, he's a studier, and he learns, and he will grow. He'll grow every day, I think. Seems it. And although that first set was long and pretty competitive and chances came and went, you were saying to me there's something inevitable about how this match is ultimately going to unfold. Yeah, because he just has too much for Tommy Robredo. Here you see Murray with a kick serve early on, and Robredo playing 5-6 feet behind the baseline. Again, the kick serve. Robredo just can't do much with the return. Murray appeared to be able to hold serve at will in the first set. Here was a chance really to put the set away very early
You can see Murray defending well, in complete control. What was he thinking there? Just, I mean,
I can volley like that.
Yeah, exactly. You do volley like that. But finally, finally Murray just put enough balls back into play where Robredo, capitulated in the end. And once he did, once the first set was Murray's, the match was over, wasn't it? I mean, Murray just came up, he comes up with brilliant shots like that one, and you start to expect it. You start to expect it, and so you overhit thinking, I have to hit a winner, or he's going to come up with a shot like that, and eventually Robredo started to make errors.
Yeah, well, let's just have a look at the draw. We don't want to get too carried away at this stage. There is, of course, a